Okay, we're going to talk about something that I find... Okay, let's talk about something that I find to be so interesting, and it's about what in the world is malpractice about? How did it ever begin? Let's talk about King Hammurabi. Okay, who is he and why do we care? King Hammurabi created codes. He created codes for many different things. And he was the king of Babylon in 1750 to 1792, which is about 1800 years before Jesus. You guys, I'm having a hard time today. Okay, King Hammurabi, let's start again. Why is he so important? He was the king of Babylon, and he made a code of rules that were used, and are still used today in a different way for malpractice. So he was the king of Babylon. He ruled from 1792 to 1750 BC. So why did he want to have these rules or codes in place? He was a wise leader, and he wanted to protect the weak, unify his empire, and bring order. He claims that these codes came to him from the god of sun, not just the god of sun, but justice as well. The code contains 282 laws that were carved into a tall stone pillar in a particular language called Akkadian. It included rules on trade, theft, marriage, slavery, and medical care. So that is how it started. That many years ago with this king who started rules and codes to punish and reward healers, healer assistants, physicians, and even veterinarians. So let's go over some of his codes. Before we talk about the codes, let me just say a quick thing about medical malpractice. So how medical malpractice is done today is, of course, very different than back in the day that he was a king and ruler. Medical malpractice means that a doctor, nurse, or other health care provider makes a mistake while taking care of someone. And that mistake causes harm to the patient. It's not just any mistake, but it happens when a medical person doesn't do what a careful and trained person would and should have done while caring for that individual. Because of this mistake, the patient can get hurt. Some people get very sick, and some people even die due to these medical mistakes. That's what we call medical malpractice today. We consider in our medical malpractice, we talk a lot about people who aren't following the standard of care. So what's the standard of care? It doesn't mean that the person has to be perfect, but the person who is giving care has to be careful, trained, and be a professional using reasonable skills based on common practice. Back to the king. All right, so his set of laws are the oldest medical malpractice rules today. The Babylonian legal code outlined how doctors were rewarded, as I said, and how successful they were with their surgeries, and also what kind of punishment they got for failures. Let's talk about Law 218, for example. This is the surgeon's punishment. If a physician performs a major operation on a man with a bronze lancet and causes the man's death or destroys the eye, well, then the physician or surgeon or healer's hand will be cut off. So that's how it was back in the day. And then he doesn't have any kind of a livelihood after that. So this king meant business, didn't he? In Law 215, if a physician performs successful surgery on a nobleman, he receives 10 shekels of silver. So what are shekels? Let's just go with that for a quick second. A shekel is currency still used today in Israel, but it's old, and so it was used back then. A shekel of silver, for example, is what was rewarded to the physician or healer. There were what we call nurses today, but they were assistant healers back then. Law 216 and 217, 5 shekels for a commoner, 2 shekels for a slave. Payment was dependent on the patient's social class. Class was a really big thing back then. Law 219 through 221, if a doctor kills a slave, he has to replace the slave. If he injures a slave's eye, boy, they talk a lot about eyes, don't they? Then he has to pay half the slave's value. Laws 222 and 223 are about the veterinarians. So veterinarians were also liable just like physicians were. For example, if an ox or donkey died from treatment, the veterinarian paid the compensation. They had to be just as responsible as the physicians and the assistant healers. In other words, their structure was success, reward, failure, punishment. And failure, punishment meant something quite severe. Nowadays, it really just means financial compensation. So back then, just like with the Hippocratic Oath, doctors, people wanted doctors to be honest and do their best in everything that they did in a professional manner. The oath, Hippocratic Oath, was the way for doctors to show that they cared about doing the right thing and helping patients stay safe. How long did Hammurabi's laws last? Did they last after he passed away? And when he did die, his son took over. And yes, his son tried to keep these laws in place as long as he could, until new leaders took over and Babylon was taken over by others. Persians? We don't know. So like I said, for a while, these medical codes continued in Babylon. They were copied by scribes, taught in schools, and used in courts. It's really interesting because these laws were rediscovered thousands of years later. In 1901, a stone copy of the code was found in Susa, which is modern-day Iran. In fact, Babylon is now modern-day Iraq. The stone copy of the code was found by French archaeologists. It is now displayed in the Louvre Museum in Paris. Today, scholars study it to understand the ancient laws and medicine and what was expected out of physicians and assistant healers and veterinarians back in the day. Hammurabi's medical laws were respected during his time and shortly after. Eventually, they were replaced by new laws, but their influence still echoes in how we think about medical responsibility and fairness today. So what medical laws and systems do we use today? Today, we no longer follow ancient laws like Hammurabi's code. Instead, we use modern legal systems, professional licensing, and safety protocols to handle medical care and mistakes. Modern medical malpractice laws occur in every state in the United States and every country. They have their own laws and their own standards. If a healthcare provider causes serious harm through a mistake, they can sue in civil court. Patients may receive, and usually do receive, financial compensation, not physical punishment to the healer. Licensing and regulation is in place to keep doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers using the most accurate and most professional and best education offered to them, and that is what the standard of care is expected out of each and every one of them. Medical and nursing boards oversee their conduct. Serious and repeated errors can result in discipline, retraining, and losing their license. And for a lot of nurses, go to prison. Standard of care guidelines are in place too. So these guidelines define what is considered reasonable and careful treatment based on expert opinion, research, and best practices. There are patient rights today that are in place. They have the rights to informed consent, proper communication, disclosure of all medical care, what's expected when they go in for surgery or any procedures, or how to treat their illness. Patients have the right to have access to their own medical records and have the ability to report unsafe care. So in summary, today's systems are built to hold healthcare professionals accountable through fair, legal, and ethical ways. Not punishment like in ancient times, although it's awfully interesting to learn where the beginning of what's considered accountability and malpractice is today, where it all began. Just amazing that this king had the vision, the forthright, the wise intellect to consider accountability and fairness and punishment in the right place to protect his people. You guys, I'm sorry this was kind of a long one. I hope, though, it was interesting. I had somebody in here who was kind of making me laugh, but this is a very fun topic. I had a lot of fun putting it together, and I hope that you learned something new about where medical malpractice originated from. I hope you enjoyed learning about where medical malpractice originated. If you like topics about medicine, myths and facts about medicine, things that we can learn from those oopsies and medical errors that go on, then consider subscribing and give it a thumbs up. Talk to you at the next video.